What's up guys, I'm back. As you can see, Patrol is still here. Rex absolutely busted ass all last week while I was away trying to get this sorted for the owner to take it. Unfortunately, there were a few unforeseen snags, things like there were no O2 sensors, which we didn't know until I'd already left. There's still some AC stuff on back order. We weren't too worried about that. We were pretty much just going to get it finished running and driving, have him take it because he really wanted it back, and then he was going to have to just come and bring it back to us in the new year anyway. But anyway, obviously it didn't quite work out. We didn't quite get there. We're not that worried about it. It's another one of those things where car's been in the build for 18 months, but always just a mad rush to get it back right when it matters most, when you're trying to finish everything up, which is one of the reasons we want to get out of doing a lot of this work, because it seems to always be the case. But it is coming along, and we are really happy with how this is coming along. So Rex has got the breathers on here, say a very similar breather setup to the last one. And then Rex actually painted the covers in a wrought iron ceramic heat-proof paint, and they actually come up really well. I'm a big fan of how the color came out. As you can see, ICT billet high mount AC system all set up with a Sandon mini pump, exactly the same as the last setup. Really good setup. It's worked really well on the last Patrol as well, and obviously keeps everything nice and high and out of the way. As you can see, all the manifolds have been painted and baked. That was at the customer's request, as we talked about last time. Didn't want to wait for them to get properly ceramic coated, but we just painted them with the ceramic paint and baked them like we did with the last ones. So you can see Rex also painted the heat shields black, and they actually look not nearly as bad as we expected, and they should hopefully completely eliminate any issues with spark plug lead and boots, which, as we talked about, is our #1 issue with these particular builds. You can see where our coils ended up mounted. We've got our 1000cc injectors in there. Our heater hoses have worked out pretty well. We are just going to put a bit of heat sleeving on this back one, just because it's a little bit close to that pipe, just for a bit of extra insurance. And then they go over obviously to our heater outlets on the firewall. And then you can see our high mount alt and everything, as you already saw. Our new rad is in, the deep skinny rad, which obviously is much nicer than what we would have had to do with the wide rad to get it to fit in, to move things around. Being the tall and skinny rad, the fans actually mount at 90 degrees, so same thing, Falcon fans. We use these on a lot of builds, basically nice and cheap, lots of CFM, easy to find and replace if something goes wrong. Makes them a pretty good pick, we believe, as far as a nice budget option for a set of fans. We've got our Raceworks power steering reservoir. Rex has made some really nice brackets to mount that up here. We actually noticed that Raceworks must have changed the design in these recently, because compared to the last ones we've used, which we always had problems, there's a pinhole in the lid which is designed for a breather, but we've always had problems with it actually spurting a little bit of fluid out there often. And the reason was there was no baffle in there. But now there's actually a baffle. The design's changed a bit, so it looks like that shouldn't be a problem anymore, which is really handy. And then that feeds obviously around the long way underneath the alternator down to our power steering pump, and there will also be a bit more heat shielding going on here when that happens. Oil feed for the turbo sorted, as well as our oil drain. As you can see, Rex ended up putting that into the timing cover, and that is all hard line drain, so there's no risk of that being hot as far as melting or splitting or anything like that. So that's all nice and safe, as it should be. Got another real good look at this manifold with the heat shields, as you can see. So really stoked with these manifolds, guys. These have come out so nice, so well. And as you can see, the breathers actually come back around and breathe into our intake pipe. Very much the same as the last setup, but yeah, really coming along. Just some wiring and stuff to go. Wiring has been started. There's just a fair bit more to go with it, and we are still waiting on some AC stuff on back order. The biggest thing that was holding us up as far as just getting it running though, was obviously O2 sensors and things like that, and then we were waiting on some 3-inch alley bends, which arrived yesterday. So happy days there. You can see the exhaust and stuff here, which you've already seen, which is all ready to go straight back on once we're sorted. This is the intake pipe, which goes from the turbo inlet up to the airbox for the snorkel. And yeah, so happy days, starting to get a bit further along with it. So the intercooler has been finished off and mounted properly, and as you can see, Rex got the power steering cooler back in over the top the same way we did the last one. So the last thing to do here is to get the grill to actually fit and shape around what's here now. As you can see, rad pipes, steam ports, all of that, all sorted. We've got our high pressure power steering line in from Mark's adapters that actually fit quite well. So with the fuel rail turned around so that the inlet's on this side, which makes it much better for our fuel lines, which as you can see here is already sorted. So this is our fuel line here, and that is a braided line, goes down to our welded AN6 on the hard line down there. So that just goes straight onto that. And with the Schrader valve removed, we have the adapter to put in our fuel pressure sensor for the Defi all-in-one on the dash, so you can keep an eye on your fuel pressure, which is always handy for diagnosis. So the new deadline is sort of fairly early in the new year. It's still going to be a bit of a push, but we're hoping that by then all of this stuff we're waiting for on back order for the AC system is here and the car can be completed properly so that it doesn't have to come back. So that would be the idea. Obviously, a better way to finish it off is if it's all done right and properly and it doesn't have to come back, which is great. So at this point, obviously, it's just intake pipe work for the intercooler and that to go. Finish off the wiring, get the e-boost in there, finish off the Defi wiring. We will have to drop the sump to put a port in the sump for oil temperature. But apart from that, not much else to go down there, and dropping the sump at this point is pretty easy because it's in a patrol. There's actually nothing in the way to just drop the sump off, so that makes it super simple. So similar to the last one, these oil air separators are service free, basically maintenance free. So the drains we've just set up to drain straight back to the sump. So you breathe from the covers into the oil air separators, and once I separate the oil, they just drain the oil straight back to the sump, and the air gets recirculated back into the filtered side of the intake pipe, back into the engine. So all legal, all emissions legal, etc. And really nice, easy, simple way to do it where you don't have to worry about checking anything with the catch cans. So as you can see, rad pipes were actually quite a bit of a challenge. Rex had spent quite a bit of time getting them right. Fair bit going on there, but yeah, rad pipes, steam ports, all of that's sorted, everything's right. So yeah, once we get this wiring finished and get this intake pipe back in and finish off a few little bits and bobs, we'll be able to hit the key, get it on the dyno and see what this thing does in party mode. And by then, hopefully all of our AC stuff is here and we get this AC system finished and she'll be ready to go again. We also did manage to get hold of a complete gearbox loom. So when the owner sold the TD42 out of the car, he actually sold it with the gearbox loom attached to it. So he managed to pick up another one, which he sent out with a mate that came out right as we were moving. So we do have a gearbox loom, which means we can finish off the wiring, which is awesome. So there's a few little bits and bobs we'll have to add to the wiring just because of some miscommunication, but overall it's looking pretty good. We're not quite sure yet where the ECU and things are going to end up because of, obviously, it's already done, it's already terminated, it's not up to us. The ECU is just going to end up obviously wherever the ECU ends up in relation to the wiring loom and the fuse box, but hopefully it's all sweet. But yeah, we'll get all that sorted and get it on the dyno. Looking forward to this one. So I've just been pushed out of the shed just for today because we needed the hoist for another thing just for the day, but it'll be back in this afternoon and we'll keep on cracking along with it over Christmas and smashing it through. Righto guys, back into it today. Unfortunately, I ended up losing pretty much the whole day yesterday, which was pretty annoying, but it is what it is. But we're getting back into it now. So the new deadline for this now is sort of early in January, but when you consider the fact that we got Christmas just around the corner, New Year's as well, Rex is actually going to Fraser Island in V80 for New Year's for a couple of days. So when you start counting down the actual days we've got left, it's still very, very, very tight. There's not much time left. So still pumping this thing out, trying to get it smashed out. As you can see, we've got to push forward off the hoist so that we can get at the doors, and Rex is sorting out the wiring inside the car. And now I'm going to start getting cracking on these AC lines and some vacuum stuff for the brake booster and clutch and that, and start getting a lot of that knocked over. But yeah, still pumping this thing in. Righto guys, cracking along. So I've just sorted out the sort of back lines for the brake booster and the clutch booster. There's a check valve in it as well, and that just goes to the standard port on the LS1 manifold. In the middle of changing over the map sensor to our 2-bar map sensor. Unfortunately, the regular 2-bar map sensors that we were using, we can't get anymore, which is really frustrating. So we're trying a ProFlow sensor. Hopefully it's bang on. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, I'm just about to get started on the AC lines. Now, this AC compressor is actually slightly different to the last one we used. So this is actually a slightly different compressor to what we would normally use in this high mount setup. It's a little bit different to the last one that was on the last patrol. As you can see, it's actually missing one ear down here, which would normally be on the pump. But it is the same physical size, same pulley, same everything else. But what I've noticed is the pads are actually in a little bit different spot. The last one, the pads were sort of way further on the outside here. They're really nice and accessible when it was mounted in this orientation. But This time they're a lot further in the pump, so no choice but to flip the pump around and have the pad on top, which means they're gonna be on top on the outside. Again, good for accessibility, just doesn't look as nice. It looks a bit nicer being able to hide them underneath, but it's just not gonna work. The way this pump is just slightly different. So the pump we would normally get, we wouldn't have been able to get till next year. So we'll go ahead and flip this pump or this compressor back over, and we'll get started on our AC lines, and hopefully it all works out and doesn't look too ridiculous with them mounted on top. Anyway, we'll see how we go. All right, so that's how the pump's gonna be. It's not gonna be too bad. Should be all right. Shouldn't be too disgusting, but well, it is what it is. It's what we've got to do to make it work. I'm sure that the owner would rather have some nice cool aircon in the cab than not have it, so it is what it is. I'll start getting going on these. Unfortunately, whoever pulled these old AC lines out, which we need to keep in and reuse, made an absolute mess of them. They're bent to buggery. We tried our best to straighten them out as best we can. We're hoping that they all work. I'm going to replace all the O-rings as I put them all back in and just try and straighten them as best I can. But yeah, bit of a shame, bit of a pain to deal with when people don't take care taking stuff apart when you need to reuse stuff. But anyway, got to work with what we got. So I'll make these lines. The last pad I'm waiting on is just the pad adapter for this pump is literally the last thing we're waiting on. I just checked through all of our gear, all the stuff we've got here, and we do have everything else here. So I can have the lines all completely made all the way up to here, basically ready to just bolt this pad adapter on when it gets here, bolt the lines in, and then it'll be good to go. So one thing we did notice, it still had the TD42 ECU in it, and this actually controls the AC request. So it runs through the pressure switch back to the ECU, and then the AC request comes from the ECU to the actual pump. So obviously we've got to remove that because we don't need it, and it was in the way of where the ECU and stuff had to go. So what we're hoping to do is just run the AC request through a relay and run the relay earth through the pressure switch, which is similar to what we did with that 6-litre 6L80 GQ we did. So that way, obviously, the pressure switch still works and that the relay won't activate if there's no pressure. So the pressure switch still does its job, and hopefully we can just get it, just send a signal directly from the AC request button on the dash to activate the pump, and it's happy days from there. And then obviously same deal, one of those will have to hijack one of the thermos and draw through the condenser from one of the thermos, which we'll have to work out with the wiring as well. So sort of hard in that obviously not doing everything in-house. There's a few things we're gonna have to go back, revisit and fix and change, like we talked about with that lift pump. We're gonna have to add another relay. But you know, it is what it is. The obvious advantage is that we didn't have to do the wiring, and you know, Tyler from Rewiley did a really good job, so we know it's going to be right. So there is mad advantages to it, obviously. So the ECU is mounted up here, up under the dash on the driver's side. This is very similar to where it was mounted in the last one. Rex made this gangster ass mount for the ECU there. So Rex is mounting the relay and fuse box that Tyler from Rewire did as well in the kick panel down there.
Pretty happy as far as the plug and play solution goes. He's made it really easy.
Yeah, once we get this stuff in, you know, we are getting pretty close to hitting the key for this thing. Righto guys, so we've got AC lines. So, sorry, just get both hands here for a minute. Bear with me. So that's sort of somewhat how they'll go off the top of the pump once the actual adapter for that pad gets here. And they'll be tied together somehow up to there and neat and tidy, but you know, it's not the nicest looking, but they are at least away from any heat. They're easy to access, etc. So you win some, you lose some. It is what it is. So we've got an access port or a service port here on the 10, and then a service port here on the 8. So I've used reduced barrier line for all of these AC lines. It's a little bit smaller diameter. You can get a little bit better bend radius. Up there on the firewall, that will all get actually P-clamped back up properly. So yeah, out of the firewall there, a little bit pretty much the same as the last Patrol, except with this one, with this airbox, we've actually got even more room behind it. So same thing, it runs down and loops around, keeps it out of the way a fair bit, and then up under this ridge on the firewall, across straight to the pump. And then the 8 out of the pump, obviously, and down, it goes down and runs along the bottom of the rad support and pops up onto the condenser here. And yeah, these pad adapters are actually a bit of a pain. I had to drill them all out. They're only made with an M6 hole, and these, both on the condenser and on the firewall, an M8 thread, so I had to drill them all out. Bit of a pain, but it is what it is. And then yeah, apart from that, the lines are just stock. The ones that were removed, I've obviously replaced and put all new O-rings in them as well. So as soon as this pad gets here, should be right to just hook them up, get this gassed up, and we should be good to go. We'll sort out the wiring side of it and happy days. So just looking further into the fuse box side of the wiring loom as well. Tyler from Rewire there has actually included a lot of the ignition and battery outputs for things like our Defi dash and stuff like that. So super handy. So makes things a lot easier. So it's, yeah, as Rex was saying, for a plug and play solution for a wiring loom, it's actually worked out really well for this particular car. So yeah, I'll just try and get a torch, see if I can give you a better look at that ECU mount that Rex made, because it's pretty sick. Oh, there you go. Look at that nice little bit of kit. Nicely mounted, secured, up out of the way, out of sight. It's freaking nice. I like it. Alright, and just for dummy purposes, I've chucked this in so you can see how that goes. That's where the breathers come in there. Again, very similar to the other setup. A little bit different, but much the same. But yeah, looking awesome, looking good. Another thing out of the way and done, AC lines. So it's coming along, coming together. Anyway guys, that's about all I've got time for. I've got to start getting going. I am glad that I stuck around this morning and did at least a morning's work though. I do feel a lot better afterwards between all the crap that's been going on. So anyway, Rex is going to keep going with this today. He's going to get cracking on the Land Cruiser tomorrow to get it sorted for Fraser and stuff. So in the overlap when I come back after Christmas and he's off for New Year's, I'll keep going with this and get as much done as I can. And by the time Rex is back from his New Year's trip, we should be able to get it on the dyno and get it tuned, and we should be good to go, and it should be like finished. So that's the idea, that's the plan. Should be happy days. It's coming along good though. I'm really happy with this ute, just as happy as I was with the last one. I'm really keen to see how these 4-into-1s go. Sorry that we missed so much of this build as far as the content goes. All right, just pulled the marked clutch line out to whack it in, and oh, that's about not what you want. That's gonna need some cleaning up. Much nicer. Good big old linish. So I just gone to whack the line in, and the clutch master is the same. It's just corroded. This whole thing was just, everything's so corroded. I think the owner must literally live on the beach. It's so corroded. So anyway, I do have to go. Just that my son had just fallen asleep when I got in the car to leave, so we thought we'd give him a little minute to nap. So I thought I'd just come back and whack that in, but I don't have time to pull that master and stuff out. So I'm out.
What's up guys? I haven't really been filming because I've just been absolutely flat out. You have to bear with me here because absolutely furious with the situation that I'm in. It is almost New Year's Eve. So it's 10 to midnight. I've been just spent all day again on this thing, trying to get it running. And I've just spent the last hour and a half just patching up, trying to re-weld that stupid welded on fitting on that fuel line. For some reason, it's got these hairline leaks that just keep leaking, little cracks and stuff, weak points, I don't know. It's a real pain in the ass. It's really hard to weld those like fittings to the tube because the tube's obviously quite thin. You'll be really careful with heat, and when I welded it, it was probably a bit hot. It's undercut it on the tube side. And now no matter what I do, I just like patch it, and all it does is move the crack further along. So at the moment, the best I can do is the fact that it just it seeps out, but it's not spraying everywhere like it was the last few times. I have to leave it at that just until I get back, and I'll have to cut it off and start again. But I have no patience for it right now. I'm absolutely off it. Christmas Eve tomorrow, and I leave for Fraser in this shit box on the 27th. So that means I have most of tomorrow and Boxing Day to do everything I need to do to that. So I had a power steering leak. I think I fixed that. We're all full of fluids. I cranked it over earlier. I got oil pressure up, and I've loaded in a startup tune. And basically, I'm bringing you guys along for the first start. So obviously there is no intercooler piping. This is just going to be a raw startup. I just need this thing drivable so that I can move it off the hoist and park it here so I can put mine on the hoist and do what I have to do to it. One thing I sort of wish I had covered, if I'd had time. So there was an M10 banjo bolt for this fitting here on the clutch, which is not the right one. It's actually a 38-24. And I hunted around, I hunted everywhere that we possibly have a fitting, and we didn't have one. But I did find a couple of 3/8 UNF bolts, and after a minute I was like, you know what I have? 3/8 UNF bolts and a drill press. So I fucking made a banjo bolt. I wish I'd filmed it, but anyway, you can imagine what it looks like. It's drilled through the side and drilled down the center. So that's actually bled up. It's got clutch. I filled up this with fluids. Looks like that fitting might still be leaking too, which is awesome. None of them were actually plugged in, which I didn't know until I was standing underneath it and had brake fluid leaking all over me, which is cool. Anyway, I'll tighten them up and sort that out, but it feels like it's got brakes, it feels like it's got clutch. So I was just gonna half-ass everything, but that should have been zip tied up in there. Anyway, it'll do whatever. Anyway, the problem is it takes almost as long to half-ass stuff as it does just finish it. So like I've widened the e-boost with plugs, same with the Defi, which I sort of needed to actually set fuel pressure because I'm on my own, so there's no other way to do it. Fuse box is down there, we're all good. HP tuner is plugged in. Let's just see what happens. So key on, fuel pumps are on, Defi's up. I already confirmed that the fans work and stuff like that, so honestly there's so much to go through with what I've done in the last 2 days. I just couldn't cover it all. I've just been too busy, I'm sorry. Give the neighbours a nice Christmas present. So 5 to midnight, let's see what happens. Ooh. It seems to me that manifold pressure is not reading properly. So this is a 2-bar, this is a ProFlow 2-bar map sensor, and it should not be reading 167 kPa at atmospheric. This seems an awful lot to me like it is a standard 1-bar map sensor, for fuck's sake. Yeah. Alright, this is immediately turned to shit. Alright, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we're back. I've loaded in standard 1-bar map settings. Now let's see what it does. There we are. So map's reading at like, if that'd focus at all, about 55 kPa, which is what we'd expect with 1-bar map settings. So I'm gonna have a pretty serious what the fuck phone call with some people next year that sold me that 2-bar map sensor. All right, all pressure's good. We're not charging, so that's a bit weird. Needs a little bit more idle air. It's sort of dies a bit there. Sounds alright, like it's not obnoxious. Yeah. We're on. It's only 12:15 now, so Merry Christmas everyone. I'm having a great time, if you were wondering. Oh, so fuel pressure's good, we're charging, water temp's good, oil temp's good, oil pressure's good. This map sensor I'm a little bit miffed by. I'm definitely going to be asking some questions about that. There go those fans. The fans are on. They're doing their job really well. Like the top one's hot, the other one's only warm, full of clean air, so yeah. It all appears to be not too bad at the moment. I'll probably just quickly lift this up before I take it off the hoist. Now that it's been running, just have a quick check underneath, make sure there's no front rear mains, any oil under there. There shouldn't be anything silly like that, but yeah, I don't know where Max is going to pick this up. So for now, this is where we're up to. I'll probably pick you guys up on trying to sort this shit box out before my Fraser trip. So I'll see you again soon. Merry Christmas, everyone. These bad boys here. This is going to be the first time it's moved on its own power. Woo! And the clutch pickup point's so close to the floor. Okie dokie. It is some ridiculous time of the morning now. I'm going to park this in there and then I'm going to shut the doors. I'm going to go home, try and get like 4 hours sleep, and I will try again tomorrow. Well, today actually, which is Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas, y'all.